What's going on, everybody? NBA 2K21 is officially dropped this morning, which means it is time to start our MyLeague series. The team we're going to be using this year is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'll explain more in a couple minutes of why I chose to use the Cavs, but first I want to give everybody a little rundown of what to expect with this series. So, unfortunately, 2K didn't really add anything new to MyLeague, which isn't surprising, but still unfortunate. The plan has always been to start in the offseason. Obviously, with the pandemic, the playoffs aren't over yet, and the offseason hasn't happened. However, MyLeague is not letting you do that this year, which is really strange. The 1 year that the start of the offseason feature is actually needed, they're not letting you do it, which is extremely dumb. So if you start on MyLeague, it's pretty much like you're advancing to the 2020 and 2021 season, but as if the offseason never happened. There's no rookies. The contracts of the free agents are all messed up, which is annoying. So I have found a workaround for it to where we can have an actual offseason right away with all of the real rookies and an actual free agency. So I'm going to download a roster where all of the rookies in this year's class, like LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, are in the free agency pool. And then all of the upcoming free agents like Anthony Davis, DeMar DeRozan, they are in the free agency pool as well. I'm going to have to manually sign all the rookies to certain teams, and that goes for free agency as well. So technically, I'm drafting and signing players for every team, but I'm going to make it realistic to where the best player does not fall to the Cavs in the first round. We're not going to have the Cavs sign Anthony Davis or really any big free agent. It's going to be all based on realism. For those who don't know, all of my franchise series are realistic, whether it's Madden, NBA 2K, MLB The Show, NCAA 14. I stride on making them based on realism. I also plan on making this series super immersive and unique. Next episode is the NBA draft episode. I have been working on custom graphics such as this one that you are going to see there, so it will have the actual feel of an NBA draft. The team we're using is the Cleveland Cavaliers, of course. I made a vote last week between the Knicks, Pistons, Spurs, and Cavs up on the YouTube community page. Very early on into the decision-making process, I was down to Detroit and Cleveland. I am a Pistons fan in real life, ironically, but I ended up picking the Cavs anyway because I think they're a more interesting rebuild series, and I think just based on what their roster looks like right now, I think this would be a more interesting team to use for our MyLeague. So here's a look at the roster going into the very first offseason. Usually it's going into Season 1, but remember, we are starting in the offseason. Looking at guard, there are two super young and talented players. However, I don't know if there's a fit between the two players I'm going to talk about. The first one is Darius Garland, the point guard coming out of Vanderbilt. He was the 5th overall pick last year. Had a decent rookie year. I mean, he showed flashes. He is a score-first point guard who is not a great playmaker yet, nor is he a great defender, which is fine. But the problem is the other starting guard on our team is very similar, that being Colin Sexton. Sexton's coming off his second season out of Alabama. He's a more proven player so far than Darius Garland, so I think Sexton right now is obviously the better choice. Coming off a 20.8 point per game season, he's a very good scorer, but like Garland, he's not a great defender, and he's not a great passer. So I don't see these two as a long-term fit as starters in the backcourt. Going into next season, I plan on keeping both of these players. However, I just can't see the Cavs becoming a winning basketball team with Darius Garland and Colin Sexton as your starting guards just because they're too similar. The defense in the backcourt is just going to be atrocious. So by the time next season ends, we might have to start thinking about which player do we want to build around long-term, Garland or Sexton. Got some depth behind those players. There's Matthew Dellavedova, who's like in his 3rd stint with the Cavs now. He is an upcoming free agent, so there's a chance he is not on the squad next year. Dante Exum was traded this past season for Jordan Clarkson. He is another year under contract, so maybe he could be a long-term bench piece. There's also Matt Mooney, who's like a two-way player. At small forward, there's Cedi Osman, who is a decent young 3-and-D player. The Cavs recently signed him to an extension, so he is going to be on the roster for another 4 years. And he's on a fairly team-friendly contract. He's only going to be making around $8 million a season. So for a guy like Osman, I feel like that's a really fair contract. Behind him, there's a player I'm super excited about. That's Kevin Porter Jr., the second-year man out of USC. I really like Porter's skill set. I think he has the ceiling to become an all-star. He is a solid scorer. He's an okay defender. He's a freak athlete. I know he only has a B physical rating, but I mean, this man can jump out of the gym. I saw him play in high school once. Kid can absolutely fly. There's also Dylan Windler, who did not play last year, so he's definitely going to be a guy who's going to play this year, whether he gets some G League time or if he's just a permanent piece off their bench. We'll have to find out. At power forward, there is Kevin Love, the veteran, now 32 years old, one of the key pieces on the Cavs championship team nearly 5 years ago. Is Love a guy who we want to look to trade in the near future? I don't see him being a long-term piece on our roster. I don't think we're going to move him in the offseason unless we get a trade we really like. Unfortunately, he doesn't have that much value because, I mean, he's starting to regress. He's under contract for a while, and it's not a particularly team-friendly deal, so I don't think we would get that much value for Love. Probably a bad contract and a pick, most likely. So maybe Kevin Love is dealt during the offseason. Maybe he's traded sometime next year. I don't really know. We'll have to see. There is Larry Nance, who has 3 more years on his deal, only making around $10 million a season. Once again, not an awful contract for this Cavs team. Nance is a decent starting caliber player who I think is very solid. There's also Dean Wade, who went to Kansas State. For those who don't know, I'm a Kansas basketball fan, so Dean Wade is not my favorite player on this roster. At center, there is Andre Drummond. Drummond is the best rebounder in basketball, no question, but players like him are becoming less and less valuable. Drummond does not score much outside the paint. He's not that great of a defender. He can block shots, he can grab steals, but he's not a phenomenal defender. Drummond did accept his player option, so he will be on the team next season, but after that, I don't really know what his long-term future with the Cavs is. Behind him, there's Tristan Thompson, who is a free agent this summer. There's no way Andre Drummond and Tristan Thompson can play together at all, so Thompson's probably not a player I'm going to look to bring back unless it's for a really team-friendly deal. Behind them, you got Jordan Bell and Ante Zizic. Both of them are not under contract for this upcoming season, so maybe we try to bring back one of them in the free agency. I'm not really sure. But overall, there are a lot of question marks on this team. What about the fit between Sexton and Garland? Can they work together in the same backcourt? Maybe trading Kevin Love in the near future. Maybe looking to trade Andre Drummond. There are a lot of interesting things with this Cavs roster, which is why I picked them. Going into the NBA draft, the Cavs had the 5th overall selection, and for me, this 5th overall pick is really the first pivot point in the 2020 NBA draft, and it might be the most important pick in the draft because it sets a domino effect for the rest of the draft. I think Anthony Edwards goes at 1. I think Golden State chooses either James Wiseman or LaMelo Ball at 2. Whoever Golden State doesn't pick, I think Charlotte goes with at 3. And then I think Deni Avdija goes at 4 to Chicago. So that leaves Cleveland at 5 with a number of good options. I expect Cleveland to go with a wing or a front court player. And 3 names who make sense for that pick is Obi Toppin, the forward from Dayton, who was arguably the best player in college basketball this past season. You got Isaac Okoro from Auburn, probably the best perimeter defender in the draft, and then the athletic big man out of USC, Onyeka Okongwu. So I think Cleveland probably ends up with one of those 3 players, and I think after that, it really sets a domino effect, as I said, for the rest of the draft. We own all of our first-round picks going forward, which is good. We have a Bucks first in 2023, which I think could be good because if Giannis is gone, they're not going to be very good. We don't have any seconds until 2023, which does kind of suck, but oh well. So for the NBA draft, the plan is, obviously for the 2020 draft, we're going to use real players, and then after that, I'm going to be using custom draft classes. We're not going to be using this class, but we're going to be making custom fictitious draft classes. So we're not going to be using the real 2021 class, not going to be using the real 2022 class. Instead, the draft classes will feature players made by you. Yes, you can make players for the upcoming draft classes. All you got to do is join my Discord server, link in the description below, and you will be able to make players who enter the draft classes and will be a part of this series and maybe are eventually drafted by the Cavs. So I've not really used fictitious classes in a 2K series before. I always use real draft classes, so I'm kind of excited to change it up this year. In my Madden franchises, I think using fictitious draft classes is more fun because you can really develop channel legends with fictitious players. I feel like it's more organic when you're not using real players. I've never done that with 2K, but I am excited to do that this season. So I hope everybody enjoyed episode 1. Next episode will be the NBA draft. Then we got free agency, and then season 1 will officially begin. I hope you all are excited. I know I am. Have a good one. Peace out.